Hello, Stitchers. Welcome to Stitch Please, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. I'm your host, Lisa Woolfork. I'm a fourth-generation sewing enthusiast with more than 20 years of sewing experience. I am looking forward to today's conversation, so sit back, relax, and get ready to get your stitch together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Stitch Please podcast. I am your host, Lisa Woolfork, and I am excited today because I am talking with the Queen Embroideress, Chief Embroideress, the head embroideress in charge, Destiny Brewer of a house called Hue, which is a custom embroidery company. Destiny, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. Can you hear me well? I want to make sure.
You sound great. You look great. And if you are a Patreon subscriber, you get to see the embroideress herself sitting right here looking quite wonderful. And we are going to jump in and talk about what does it mean to have an embroidery business. I was saying earlier, and she's based in Atlanta. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to her amazing website. It's just so beautiful. But you started as an apparel company, or an Afro apparel company in 2016. What was that like, and what precipitated a change?
Well, that was good. That was my first business. So that's how I actually got into making things for money. I usually make things, but not for money. But making things for money. I started with actually head wraps. So I started off sewing. So I was sewing head wraps and then making little jewelry, little bespoke things, and then got into t-shirts with screen printing. And then I went into embroidery because I wanted to add something to the business that was not a lot of money. So, buy low, sell high, or have a good profit return. And I stumbled across embroidery because enamel pin wearers usually wear patches. So I usually was like, when I got to enamel pins, I usually see enamel pin buyer have patches. So I was like, oh, I'm looking for that. But ordering overseas was a lot. It was a lot of work. It was not the easiest process as well. So when I got my first sample, I was like, oh, I can do this. Yeah, I can do this.
I love it. I'm telling you, I feel like Black women are the original DIYers, right? We are the original do-it-ourselves, right?
Yes.
And what I appreciate about this story is that you started sewing on a single needle machine. You were making head wraps and then making bespoke items just one at a time. What was your process in doing that? Did you enjoy that part? Did you like that part of the sewing life? Or did you feel like, well, I think I could probably get more bang for my buck, because you weren't. So did you describe your earlier sewing as stuff you were doing for profit or just for family? Or did you start small and then go bigger? How does your sewing story begin?
So I guess I went in head first, because I did go straight for profit. I made a couple of things for myself. So when I started posting them, then I was like, oh, I can make this like an actual legit business. And I really was not fluid in sewing. I was just learning as I was going. So I had like a little practice sheet of scrap fabric. So I would practice with the zigzag stitch, or my straight stitch wasn't as straight-ish. But that's what I was.
You're straight-ish.
Straight-ish. So that's where I just started making everything zigzag. Because I'm like, I can't mess this up as much as I can mess up the straight stitch. But I just learned, because I actually got into more making things with my grandmother who passed, but she showed me how to crochet, and she was a knitter. So it was like, progressive things of like, she knew how to make clothes. But I always say that's the generational break. Like our grandparents, like my grandparents, my great-grandparents, they had to know how to make things because it was not readily available to them to just go buy.
Yes.
So that's something I'm seeing even just now. A lot of us are learning how to make things because we don't want to wait for it. And although it's available to buy, everything is crop tops and stuff. And I ain't got time to be wearing a crop top for everything.
Like, I'll make myself a whole shirt. Thank you.
Yes. I'd rather just make me a shirt.
Oh, I really, really love that. And I think what excites me most is the fact that you were sitting down at a sewing machine. You were working on one garment at a time. And then you decided, you know what, I think I want to enhance this and go in a different direction. How do you go from one single needle embroidery machine to what you have now? What was your first embroidery machine like? What was your first when you got the sample back from overseas and you looked at this patch and you're like, oof, I could do this, I think. And then you just say, okay, let's go see what we can do. So do you just go buy like that Brother PE 400 with a teeny tiny hoop that not everybody, that many people start with a good intro machine? How did you say, you know what? I want to invest in this and it requires me investing in myself. What was your process there with getting that very first machine and saying, okay, I'm gonna let this thing sew itself now?
So I got the I think it was the PE 625. And then I actually went through like 3 Brother machines because every time I wanted to do something bigger, the 4x4 can only do so much. Yeah. So I had to go to the 5x7 and I think the biggest one was like an 8x, I don't even think it was 8x10. I think it was the 5x7. I think that was the biggest one I ended up going to. And, it was just learning learning the technical side of the machine. That was the biggest part of the journey because although people think it's a plug and play, it's really not. It's more of a like, I plug it in, I put this in, but if something goes wrong, how can I rectify this? Yeah, and most people struggle with the fixing part, not the design part.
Right. No, I think that's an excellent point. For those people, Destiny, who are not familiar with embroidery machines, they might be familiar with sewing machines. Can you explain a bit about when you and I are talking about a 4x4 or 5x7, etc.? Explain to them about hoop sizes and how a single needle embroidery machine is set up.
So a single needle embroidery machine is set up with what's the best way to say it? Like a flat surface to embroider on. So in comparison to a multi-needle, it's a forward facing. So you put the hoop in forward, like straight ahead of you. On a flat single needle, it's placed downward. So you have to clip it down. So that kind of limits your ability to do certain, we're not saying limit, it's harder to do certain things like t-shirts and baby garments because you have to hoop it flat rather than me just loading it and avoiding making the mistakes of stitching things together. So when you have a 4x4 or like a 5x7, it's the size of the design. So 4 inches by 4 inches or 5 inches by 7 inches. I usually tell people think about it as printer paper. That's an 8x11.
Yes.
So just give you a kind of a scale on how big something can go.
Yes.
Single needles are great to start off with, or even I know people who are doing great with just doing single needles because they've learned and perfected that. I quickly removed myself as far as I could because I hated changing the thread color. That is the worst part.
Oh my goodness. So y'all, I love this, Destiny. I love the comparison to paper because a 4x4 is a great place to start. That's not where I started. I knew right away. I thought about it as like my advice someone gave me when I bought a computer. When you buy a computer, buy more computer than you think you're going to need. Go ahead and get the half terabyte, or whatever, because you're going to use it and soon you will outstrip the needs of it. And a 4x4, y'all, allows you to do a design that's about the size of an index card and not a 3x5 index card, a 3x3. Right? Because even though you have a hoop size that's 4x4, there's a design size limit, within that. So you can't stitch to the edge of your hoop because the way that the single needle embroidery is set up, it has an arm and you slide your hoop into the arm and the arm moves front, back, and left and right. Your needle doesn't move at all. And it really can be so frustrating. And every time I was trying to put something in like a baby onesie or whatever, trying to get it in there, I felt like I had to keep my eye on it the whole time so it didn't hit a snap or it didn't, it's just so much, at least for me, I found it.
Yeah.
I had so much, that gave me so much worration and headache. I was just like, No.
You see a lot of clips on people's things, like they're clipping things in different parts, trying to keep it from sliding under so you don't stitch, or falling forward so it doesn't stitch. And that's when I knew it was time for me to move to a multi needle machine, just so I could get away from I applaud anyone who is working actively on a single needle embroidery machine and doing great designs, because I had zero patience for that.
Do you remember a particular moment when you were like, you know what? Forget it. This 4x4 is not where it's at. Was there a particular moment or a particular design or a particular disaster or whatever that you were like, okay, I deserve better than this?
Well, I had a patch that I was making this when I was first starting patches, and the design had like 7 colors, but they were all in different spots. So it was like, I only needed to change the thread for maybe 100 stitches, which is relatively not a lot.
Right.
But then I had to go back to that color right after I changed this color. So I'm constantly, like, a patch on the machine I have now, that would took maybe 20 minutes from beginning to end, took me about an hour, because I had to keep rethreading and I was like, oh my gosh. So that's when my research was like, what other machine can I get?
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I could imagine it looking like a checkerboard. Y'all imagine like a black and red checkerboard, but you can't stitch out all the black at once or all the red. It's saying, do this red one. Now do this black one. Now do this red one. Now do this black one. And then you're like, you know what? I don't like sewing anymore. So no, I'm not doing anything. Oh, that's so cool, because I think that you're right. There is this assumption. I think as sewing machines and embroidery machines have gotten better, the technology has improved. They're able to do more things. People just think, oh, I'm going to buy this embroidery machine. And then, I mean, I know some folks, they do it with the Silhouette Cameo and the Cricut too.
Yes.
They will buy one, still have the receipt in their hands, and then with their other hand, they're on Facebook saying, I sell patches, y'all. Come over here and get t-shirts from me. And I'm like, but sis, your machine is still in the box. How are you? Well, I'm gonna go to YouTube University and I'm gonna watch all these videos, because it's clearly easy, because the machine does all the work. And then you sit down and you put some fabric in there and you're like, wait a minute, how come this needle keeps breaking? Or what's all this thread nesting underneath? And what's all this? So it's a lot more, I think, than people realize. Is that something that you found as you have transitioned your business from, what it started as in 2016 to what it has become now? That what you have now is just so much bigger and so much more beautiful and expansive. It's really quite lovely, Destiny. You've done a wonderful job. I hope that you take some time to pause and celebrate that. But what are some of the things that you have been really excited about as you were able to get away from the one small home machine to more, to larger or more complex machines?
Excited about the possibilities. So even the machines I have now, I'm still limited. And it's funny you said about getting more machines than you need, because when I first started, I had the mindset of like, oh, I'm just gonna get what I know I can work with now. And I literally outgrew that machine 6 months after I bought it. But I turned down designs and I turned down clients because of what they want and I couldn't do on the machine. And then I turned around and bought it twice again. and I was like, okay, I needed to increase production, not necessarily, like it made more sense for me to increase the amount of machines running than to get one machine that was bigger at the moment. So now I'm at the place where I can get 2 big machines. So now I have 3 smaller needles, like smaller multi-needle, and then 2 bigger multi-needle machines. I have 5 in total is the goal by the end of next year. So having that will increase the ability for me to do more complex designs, because the machine I have now is 10 needles. The bigger machine is 15. So that means more colors, more options, and the hoop size goes up to like 20 inches, which if you don't know, that's humongous.
I have 20. I have never. What are you going to hoop? A car? Like, honestly, this is
people do car mats with that. They do car mats.
Oh my word!
It just gives me the ability to like say I'm doing a set of patches.
Yes.
So the hoop I have now, maybe the max I could fit on 10 patches. Then I could fit 20, double the amount. So that same amount of time it would take me to do that 10 or 20, I could put on that one hoop rather than rehooping and faster production. Just being able to do things a little bit faster. I appreciate the people that work with me because I'm not slow, but I'm not the fastest. But they appreciate the work and the detail that I put in, that they're willing to wait that extra, week to get something from me rather than going to another overseas or going somewhere else. So being able to keep up, and I ain't keeping up with them, but to keep up with the demand.
Yes, exactly. You're not
better.
trying to be like the Walmart of embroidery, right?
You're not trying to
like get as much as you can, as fast as you can, because you are not a machine. You are a human person with a life and a family and, other things. And so you aren't doing this every waking minute of your life.
Hey, friends. Hey, what are you doing on Thursday around 3 p.m. or so? You got 30 minutes to hang out with Black Women Stitch? You got 60? If so, come through for 30-minute Thursdays. Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can chill with Black Women Stitch on Instagram Live or talk with us through the two-way audio on Clubhouse at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Thursdays for 30 minutes. Come hang out, chill, and have fun with us. See you Thursday.
Oh, no. I had to learn that this year as well. Like, the pandemic has taught me to slow down. I lost my aunt to COVID. I had a friend that was almost, passed from COVID. He's also an embroiderer. So that was very hard, hard for us in our group to watch her go through that. But I even shut down for the rest of the year. So I'm like, I'm not taking orders for the top of the year. I'm sorry, guys, but I need to make sure I spend time with family.
That's right.
Took off for Thanksgiving. I'm taking off for Christmas and New Year's just to make sure like I take time, because your rush is not my rush.
Yes, your rush is not my rush. I absolutely love that. You're like, look, you know what? I've been here the whole time. and you just came up with this idea. And so I cannot execute it for you. But maybe you can find somebody else who's willing to drop all their plans.
I do give resources, so if I can't do it, I'm not the person who's like, no, and then like don't respond. I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't do. But here are like 5 other people that I know that may be able to help you. Just so it doesn't feel like I'm just burning you and saying, nah, I can't help you.
No, you can't have it. Not from me and not from nobody ever.
Yeah.
What I appreciate too, Destiny, is the kind of the cooperation that you're talking about, right? That you have a group of embroiderers, you have a group of friends, that you all are in this business or in the same industry, but you're able to support each other, right? So if you can't do something for whatever reason, you could say, hey, here's 4 or 5 other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's some folks who wouldn't do that. There's some folks who would not refer anybody. Can you talk a bit about your philosophy is there a philosophy that that guides you in the decisions you make about your work and how you share information or how you recommend, your peers or whatever?
Well, in that situation, I have a couple of mantras I live by, but in that situation, I internalize what's for me is for me, because I can't change what's going to happen, whether it happens or not. That's what's supposed to happen, and then I don't hoard information. So that's not more like a mantra, but that's something that I make sure I do the total opposite of what it was like to get into this, because it was so hard to get help that I don't, I now understand some people can abuse your help, they abuse you, but I still try to provide that resource. I'm like, if someone asks me, oh, where'd you get that sweatshirt? I'm sending you 3 websites, because you come out better than me sending you all these vendors than us exchanging all this information, because I don't even want to give you this website.
Right.
Because that doesn't take away from what I do. Because I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You're going to do what you're going to do. So here's 3 vendors. Here's this. Here's that. And most of the time, you won't even get that from them, because that's all they really needed. They just needed someone to lead them in the right direction. Even with my clients, I tell them, like, if I can't do this, this is where you can go. Or if you want to do this yourself, because say they're on a tight budget, because I do work with a lot of small and upcoming businesses. I'm like, if this is can't fit your budget, because unfortunately my price is not going to change.
Right.
Here's how you do it yourself. Here's the steps to take it yourself. Then you can make that decision on if you want to make that investment into you, or you want to help me help you. And then you can still see it like, hey, I can do this myself, just like how I did. I saw the patch and like, hey, I can do this myself.
I want to try this.
Then here you go. Here's the machine companies you should look into. This is where you get supplies, because it doesn't take away from what I'm going to do for the next person.
That's right. No, I think that's so wonderful, because as you were saying about the plug and play nature of it, it's not plug and play. I think some of the things that people seem to miss is that embroidery is very complicated. Yes, it's done by a machine, but it's a machine the machine is it's not witchcraft. It's not like Harry Potter. You can just say, make a patch, and then like walk away and you come back and the patch is sitting there, right? There's so many elements that go into it. Needles, needle size, shape, brand, thread.
I wish I could show you this. I wish I could show you my tech right now. My machine looks like an Autobot or a Decepticon, like a transformer, because he took off everything just to find the problem, because it's stitching weird. But just learning that, I had to learn. I'm changing boards. I'm connecting wires, because, like I said, like you said, if something goes wrong, you have to know how to fix it for the most part, because even if the machine company has tech support, you're on the phone with them and they're telling you
what to do.
Plug this in, unplug that. So you have to have some type of technical knowledge just off the strength of it. They're not here to do it by hand. And then you have a technician, but then, you got to pay him. So you don't have so you got to pay him for his time and his expertise. So it's a lot.
That is, it's so funny you mentioned that, Destiny, because I wasn't even thinking at all about the machine itself as a tool that needed maintenance and that it needed regular inspections. I was thinking just holding a patch in your hand that has good tension, that's very densely stitched, but also looks good and lies flat. There's so much that goes with just putting the stabilizer in the hoop, and then the cutaway and the scissors and the thread jumping, and not to mention the digitizing, if that's something like, it's incredibly complicated. And I was just thinking the other day, I was like, you know what? I wish that there was a sewing machine maintenance training program for Black women.
Ooh, that'd be good. Because in the classes that I want to provide next year, I want to be able to do a little bit more of like, okay, yeah, you can come and learn this, but if something goes wrong, this is what you do. Because most machines, even if they're made by different companies, the support is relatively the same. So if your thread keep breaking, then it's most likely the needle or the tension. If it bird's nest, then it's something in the bobbin case. So those are things that go hand in hand, but I do have a lot of people reach out to me saying they have the same machine as I do. So they want to come learn in person, because like I said, everybody's suffering from COVID. So they don't have as many tech support. So you still need to know how to do it yourself. Now, if it comes too crazy, then I'm like, hey, I got this guy named Sun Moon who's going to help you.
That's what, yes. At least you have access to that. Like, you have access to expert support. But I was just thinking, I said, everyone I've ever taken my machine to be fixed is a man. It's even like the sewing machine man, the sewing machine repair man. I've been sewing for almost 25 years, and I have never opened up the top part of my sewing machine. I've never taken like that. I mean, I open the bottom up and clean it out and take out the bobbin case and dust and do all that. But I don't know how to engage, if I were to look at it and say, oh, something's wrong here, I need to open this hood up and look and see. I have never done that. And
that's funny, because I'm thinking about the quilt stores, and they're all men. They're all older white men at that.
Yes. And so how do we get in these kinds of courses? How do we contact, because I know every company protects their tech, right? That it's not like, I don't know how one would even be trained in learning how to do, to adjust a 10 needle Melco machine, or, you know, or how do you fix an industrial Juki, or how do you do, I have a computerized baby lock single needle. Like, I have no idea. And the machine was so expensive. I certainly don't want to mess it up, you know? And so that's the thing. I find myself, whenever I feel like I have a spot around a fear, right? Like I think people are like, oh, I'm so afraid of buttonholes. And I'm like, bitch, what is a buttonhole? Like, what are you afraid? What do you mean you're afraid of a buttonhole? I'm afraid of a buttonhole. I'm afraid to do zippers. Zippers? What are you afraid of? Doggone zippers.
Add me to the zipper train, because that was not my thing.
There is nothing in sewing to be afraid of. And whenever anybody says something, oh, I'm afraid of what? How? It's not going to bite you. I mean, the worst thing is that your zipper looks ugly and you break a needle. Like, it's not going to kill you. You're not going to end up in the hospital. There's nothing to fear except for myself and me. And the thought of opening up that sewing machine just feels like I might as well just throw it out the window then. Like, we need to
go bomb rush one of those places and be like, teach me. Because I think they do. I think that's the funny thing. I don't think nobody's ever asked. I feel like if I go to the quilt store up the street, we have a sewmachine.com. I don't know if you know that website. Yeah. They have their Atlanta hub here. So I feel like if I go up there and I'm like, hey, I don't know the older white guys name. I see them all the time. I'm like, hey, can I learn? Do you guys teach like tech support? I feel like they will, because they host us for everything else. But I don't think nobody's asked.
I think I wonder, because one of the things you said struck me. You said, I don't hoard information. I don't hoard knowledge. And sometimes I wonder if the reason that it's always the sewing machine repair man is because there's something in the industry itself that is keeping that knowledge the province of men. Either a cultural assumption that men are better at this, which is, you know, just crap. It's just a stereotype.
It's funny because they don't sew clothes. So how did you become the gatekeeper?
Listen, why do we have so many male gynecologists? Why men founded gynecology? No, I'm serious. You know this is true, right?
Yes, and they used to do it on slaves.
On enslaved women without anesthesia, by the way.
Because they thought we had higher
pain tolerance, and also because they just don't give a shit. But but you see what I'm saying? Like, these things, you know, people are like, oh, keep politics out of sewing, keep whatever. All this stuff is already here. And just because people want to close their eyes and ears because they don't want to deal with anything that makes them think too hard. We really do. What is going to happen if, like, you know, if all the sewing machine repair people are in their 80s or in their 60s, right?
They are, though.
Who is going to fix your sewing machine when they aren't there to do it? Right?
That's funny, because I'm like, they are all that age. Like, they're all, you know, getting up. Like, who are y'all sharing this information with? You got to pass it down. Unless you're not passing. That's crazy. You got to be passing it down. But who you pass it down to?
Right? Because, you know, but as you know, there's some folks who they want to keep it like, well, if I tell you, then you won't need me. And therefore, you know what I'm saying? It's just, I don't know. It's just something to think about as we move into, we're recording this now, y'all, in 2021, in December 2021. The episode will be out in 2022. But it does make me wonder, like, what is the future of sewing machine repair, and how can we put it into the hands of, at least for me, it's Black women, like, to be able to know how to do these things to support our own interests, and anything that helps us get us closer to independence and liberation and self-reliance and all of that is all stuff I'm like, yay, yes, let's. Right.
I think that goes back to like what you were saying about not being afraid. So you not being afraid, like, I will bust down my embroidery machine. I don't know what I'm looking at, but I'll bust it down. And if I don't know, I'll call tech, or text my friend's son Moon and be like, hey, what's this? Why is it doing this?
Yes.
If I have to pay him to come out, I'm still watching him. So even though I'm working, I watch what he's doing to at least learn something, just to make sure that I'm not naive. But you got to open it. So now that's your challenge, is to bust it open, just to look inside and close it back up.
Listen, young sis, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not doing it. I am not.
It's no different. You don't even open up like you open up the hood of your car. You may not know what you're looking at, but you at least know.
I know I can close the trunk hood back though. The hood of the car. I can close. I can open it and I can shut it up again. I don't know how to open this. I think there's a special screwdriver that is patented in order to get into my machine.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I could even find a hex driver or whatever. That's okay, because I'm just going to admit that is something that I have some hesitation around. And it is a spot that I need to interrogate and think through, And
all right, send me the machine. I'm gonna find it and buy you this screwdriver for Christmas. It's going to be in there, like, open the machine.
My spouse is going to come down and they're going to say, why are you down here crying? I met this lady on the internet and she told me to open my machine and now it's broke.
You just open it and close it gently. You ain't got to touch nothing. You just open it. You got to look at it.
When I sign up for my training course, that is when I will do it. That's a way for me to get past my fear, is to take a course. So I just got to find out who's offering them these courses and how to get in on one. That's all.
Yes.
So I wanted to think about some of the consulting that you offer. So just as we've been having this great conversation, and I can see that you have so much skill and expertise in addition to creative vision, what kind of things do you offer folks to kind of, in terms of the things that you do for your one-on-one consulting that can help people feel more confident in this? Maybe after listening to this conversation, people might be really excited to do this. And then on the other hand, they might be, wait a minute, 10 needles. And what now? I just don't know if I can deal with 10 needles moving at one time. How do you help people get over their hesitation?
I just give them a place to start. So if you have any reservations about whatever machine you have, or if you don't even have a machine, kind of giving you a place to start, like you mentioned before, and knowing what you're doing and getting the machine that overcompensates your current needs. Because like we can say, you're going to shortchange yourself. So if you're saying, "Oh, I want to do baby items," I'm not going to even recommend you to get a single needle. I'm gonna like if that's in your budget, yes. I'm like, prepare yourself to upgrade to either. It don't have to be super big. It can be a baby lock. It can be even a brother multi-needle, but something where you can load and unload fast and stitch quicker and stitch better, like bigger designs. So that's always, I'm thinking, it's like we shortchange ourselves and our abilities. And I've done that a lot. Now I'm not. I'm trying new things I haven't even done before. I'm very good to take on something that I'm like, oh yeah, you do that now. And my mind, I'm like, no, I don't do that, but yeah, I do it because I'm gonna learn.
Yes. The answer is yes. I've done this, therefore I can also do that.
Yes, I've done that. So I know I don't have an issue learning how to do this. So with the consulting, I just give them that starting spot and provide vendors and supplies and things of that nature. Because that's also a big issue. Most people, like I said before, don't know where to start. They have this idea, but they don't know where to start. And with we'll see how COVID with the, what is it, the Omarion, the Omicron, one of these.
Omarion. Let's call it Omarion. I like that better.
So that's what Black Twitter says. I'm going to take that.
I like it. I'm with it.
So with that, we'll see. But I wanted to bring stuff in person because I'm a hands-on person.
Yes.
So I would feel like that would help a lot of people get started. They can see it in action. And like you said, it's not a plug and play. So you see it, open up the side to be like, this wire is this, so this is this. And that helps a lot of people just knowing that at the end of the day, you can always reach back to ask me a question. And then, of course, I can direct you to an answer.
I really appreciate that. I think I really appreciate that you're kind of committing to the hands-on because, that kind of helps you, but also that you're willing to take phone calls. And if people wanted to ask you can also do the online or just discussion with you, which also I think is really generous. I wanted to talk just before hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again as we move on into 2022, but I was thinking about the 10 needle machine and it just seems like 10 needles. That is
it's not a lot.
It just feels like a lot. Like I look at it and I've seen them and I'm like, they say this is a sewing machine. It's a machine that does sew things and it stitches things and but it just also looks kind of like a piano and also kind of like a, one of those old timey machines that you could put your eyes up to and look into the, distance. It's just, the way you approach it has these little arms. It's also
intimidating.
What's that?
I say it can be intimidating.
It just looks like a lot of machine. What advice would you give someone who wants to just to say, okay, is there a middle distance between like a 10 needle and a 4 and a 5? Or if you're like, if you're going to do multi-needle, don't bother with a 4. Just go ahead and get as much as you can get right now to start.
I think that goes back to what are you looking to do? So I know, I actually had a client I did a consultation with, and I was telling her if she wants to do baby items, that could be all she does, because that is a good business. Yes. People are always having babies.
That's true. And they need blankets and onesies and all sorts of things that people like to have personalized. It's great.
Yeah. And then but in that space, you don't have a lot of colors. It's usually pink, blue, shades of pink and blue, green and orange, shades of green and orange. So you're not really changing. Whereas I get a patch, it may have 30 colors. And I'll be like, all right, we got to reduce that down to this.
Yes.
There's people have different things with their logos. With baby stuff, it's usually very simplistic. Yes. So you don't have to get a 10 needle. You can start off with I think they have a 6 needle machine. Okay. So you can do a 6 needle baby lock, brother. And a good thing about starting there is most of the time when you upgrade, the technology doesn't change. It's just the needle increases. So when I was switching brother machines, the technology wasn't changing. I was just getting bigger hoops.
I see.
And I wanted to get a brother multi-needle, but it just came out better financing wise to go with a different company. But starting with brother, going to this machine, I was like, oh, I can see how there's similarities.
Yes, I understand. Okay. And so tell me also, like, I know that there's a big thing with software, that software is another like big thing. Like, y'all, I mean, this is not like, you take a sewing pattern, you read it 3 times, and then you sit down and you start sewing. This, you have to also like get in front of the computer and look at your design and make sure it's sized the right way and make sure like all of the gaps are closed and the understitching and all of the things that have to be, I think a patch is a combination of creativity and engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It has to be well structured and balanced so that like, at least from my experience working with my single needle, which is a combo embroidery and sewing machine, like if the design is too dense, it just feels like it's just stabbing a hole into the thing I'm trying to make, And so the software, there's so many moving parts that I think it's just really generous of you to add through as a consultant, in addition to someone who's willing to say, hey, I can't do it. Why don't you ask this person instead? I think that's really great.
Yeah, because with the digitizing, so most of the digitizing that I have, I don't do myself. I have a digitizer for that, because business-wise, it just takes you can literally make a business just digitizing. There's a couple of Black women who are trying to be proficient in digitizing. I told them they need to hurry up so we can give our money, back to them. But because it's it's one of those things, like even if you don't do it, you still need to know. So I know how I want my stuff to look like. So when I reach out to my digitizer, I'm like, okay, can we adjust the tension on this? Can we take this out, make this applique, and then only do the border? Make sure you still have to know what you're looking for, but it's totally something you don't have to do on your own, because there's so many people, and it is a trial and error too. So it's okay to get something from one digitizer and not like it.
Right.
You can go to another one and they will most likely do what you like.
Yes, yes. My goodness, Destiny, this has been such a great conversation. I'm going to ask you one last question I've been asking folks lately. The slogan for the Stitch Please podcast is that we help you get your stitch together. Now, if I asked you for advice, what advice would you give someone listening to the podcast who's interested in what you are doing? How would you tell them, what would you say to them to help them get their stitch together?
It's okay to make mistakes. And it's okay to not have it all together the first time. I think especially when I go into embroidery groups, a lot of people are upset because they've done it 400 or 500 times and it's not working. A lot of us be like, okay, take a step back, go from start to finish, and see where we can help you, because it is okay to have 5 hats and also all 5 hats. Yes. The best thing I learned is how to fix my mistakes and make content out of it. So I do post videos of like, hey, y'all messed up this shirt. Watch how I fix it.
Yes.
Because it also shows that person, that consumer, like that, okay, Destiny gonna mess it up, but most likely she's gonna fix it. And then two is showing them that everything is not gonna be glamorous and perfect every time I post it. Most of the time if I posted something, well, at this point, I'm like a 95% good on the first try.
Nice.
The 5% is gonna be in my stories because it disappears in 24 hours. So you ain't gonna see it later. But I'll show it to you in the story.
Oh, that is so perfect. That is so perfect. Thank you so much, Destiny Brewer, for being with us today. We have been talking with A House Called Hue, and I'll be sure to put all her links in the socials, and we will keep an eye out for more great work coming out from A House Called Hue. Thank you so much, Destiny.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lisa, for having me.
Yay! This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to the Stitch Please podcast, the official podcast of Black Women Stitch, the sewing group where Black Lives Matter. We appreciate you supporting us by listening to the podcast. If you'd like to reach out to us with questions, you can contact us at blackwomensstitch@gmail.com. If you'd like to support us financially, you can do that by supporting us on Patreon, Patreon. And you can find Black Women Stitch there in the Patreon directory. And for as little as $2 a month, you can help support the project with things like editing, transcripts, and other things to strengthen the podcast. And finally, if financial support is not something you can do right now, you can really help the podcast by rating it and reviewing it anywhere you listen to podcasts that allows you to review them. So I know that not all podcast directories or services allow for reviews, but for those who do, for those that have like a star rating or just ask for a few comments, if you could share those comments and say nice things about us at the Stitch Please podcast, that is incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. Come back next week and we'll help you get your stitch together.